Your Jenkins master just died with no space left on device. A Freestyle Job's archived artifacts silently filled the disk. Let's break down Jenkins Freestyle Jobs, how it works, and the exact mistake behind that failure. A Jenkins Freestyle Job is the most basic project type. You fill out a form, source code, triggers, build steps, post-build actions. Jenkins runs them sequentially. It's like a recipe card, simple and reliable. The source code management section tells Jenkins where your code lives. Most common is Git. Enter the repository URL, add credentials, and specify a branch. Always use specific branches to avoid unexpected builds. Build triggers define when your job runs. You can use cron for scheduled builds, poll SCM for changes, or webhooks for instant triggers. Avoid frequent polling, it wastes resources. Webhooks are more efficient. The build environment section prepares the workspace. Always delete workspace before build to avoid stale files. Use credentials binding to inject secrets as environment variables. Set a timeout to prevent hung jobs. Build steps are the heart of your job. Add shell commands or invoke build tools. Keep steps simple, put complex logic in a script file in your repo. Use set E to fail on first error. Post-build actions run after the build. Archive artifacts for traceability, publish test reports to see trends, and trigger downstream jobs conditionally. Always set a build discarder to avoid disk bloat. Parameterized builds allow you to pass variables at runtime. Add parameters like branch or environment. Reference them in build steps and SCM. This makes one job reusable for many scenarios. Never hardcode secrets in build steps. Use the credentials plugin to store them securely. Bind credentials as environment variables in the build environment. This keeps secrets out of logs and source control. You can chain Freestyle Jobs to create a simple pipeline. Use build other projects post-build action to trigger downstream jobs. Pass artifacts using copy artifacts from another project plugin. For complex flows, migrate to pipeline. Monitor your jobs with email or Slack alerts. Use plugins like Build Monitor View and Disk Usage. Set timeouts to prevent hung builds. Proactive monitoring catches issues before they become incidents. Freestyle Jobs are great for simple tasks, but they have limitations. When you need version control, parallel execution, or conditional logic, migrate to pipeline as code. Store your CI config in a Jenkins file in SCM. Follow these best practices. Always parameterize builds, set build discarders to manage disk space, archive artifacts for traceability, and use credentials binding for secrets. Keep build steps simple and monitor resources. This is the same issue we highlighted at the start. Here's exactly why that happened. A Freestyle Job archived artifacts after every build, but no build discarder was configured. Over months, the artifact directory grew until it filled the disk. Jenkins couldn't create temp files, so all builds failed with no space left on device. The Freestyle Job had no discard old builds configured, so archived artifacts accumulated indefinitely, eventually filling the disk. Adding a discard policy with max 10 builds and 7 days retention prevents unbounded growth. The fix was to configure a build discarder. In the job config, set discard old builds to keep last 10 builds and discard artifacts after 7 days. Also added disk space monitoring to alert before it fills again. The key setting is discard old builds. This is the mistake that caused the incident. Without a build discarder, artifacts accumulate indefinitely, eventually filling the disk and crashing Jenkins. Always configure a discarder to delete old builds automatically. Hardcoding secrets in shell scripts exposes them in console logs and source control. Use Jenkins credentials binding instead. Bind secrets as environment variables so they're never visible in plain text. Polling every minute wastes CPU and network resources. Use webhooks instead to trigger builds only on actual code changes. This reduces load on Jenkins and your SCM server. The article references Jenkins 2.44+. Freestyle Job configuration is stored in XML config, XML. In Jenkins 2.44+, the XML schema for Freestyle Jobs is stable, but plugins may add custom XML elements. If you manually edit config XML, ensure you use the correct schema version. Otherwise, Jenkins may fail to load the job. Always use the UI to configure jobs to avoid schema mismatches. The article mentions parameterized builds, but doesn't show dynamic parameters. The Active Choices plugin allows parameters to be populated dynamically, e.g., list branches from Git. This is a production pattern to avoid hard-coding branch lists. The article recommends setting build discarders per job, but in production, you can enforce a global default via the Jenkins model, Jenkins location configuration, or the global build discarder plugin. This prevents diskful incidents when new jobs are created without discarders. Use the Discard Old Builds global setting to apply a default policy to all Freestyle jobs. The article mentions chaining jobs, but doesn't show passing parameters downstream. The Parameterized Trigger plugin allows you to pass build parameters from one Freestyle job to another, enabling dynamic pipelines. To diagnose disk space issues, use df-h to check available space. Find large artifact directories with find. Delete old builds manually if needed, then configure a build discarder to automate cleanup. Let's run through some common interview questions. What is a Freestyle job? Simplest Jenkins project configured via UI. How to pass parameters? Check. This project is parameterized. Add parameters. Difference between build periodically and poll SCM? Build periodically runs on schedule. Poll SCM checks for changes first. How to manage secrets? Use credentials binding plugin, never hardcode. When to migrate to pipeline. When you need version control, parallelism, or conditional logic. And a few frequently asked questions. Can I use a Jenkins file with Freestyle? No, use pipeline job for that. How to run on specific agent? Use restrict where this project can be run with label. How to trigger on GitHub push? Use GitHub hook trigger for Git SCM polling. How to copy artifacts from another job? Use copy artifacts from another project post-build action. How many builds to keep? Typically 10-20, configure with discard old builds. To recap, Freestyle jobs are great for simple automation. Always parameterize, set discarders, use credentials binding, keep steps simple, prefer webhooks, and know when to migrate to pipeline. Follow these practices to avoid production incidents. Ready to go deeper? Up next, Jenkins Freestyle job tutorial, then Jenkins plugins, then Jenkins pipeline basics. Find them all at TheCodeForge.io. Thanks for watching. The full article and code examples are covered in detail at TheCodeForge.io.